covering while loops today. We'll be talking about what while loops are and give some examples of them. Let's just go over the schedule because things have been a little bit mixed up because of what's been going on. So if we look, this was November 1st. We were working on our assignment. Of course, I postponed the assignment due date till further notice, probably around here. We'll see after midterm, so we won't include it. And here the practice test will be now this Thursday. We'll push it down 1 week. And test 4 will be right here on the 11th, okay? For strings. In the meantime, we're going to go ahead and cover while loops, and I'll also release a few exercises. Actually, I'll release one of these exercises today. Okay, so this is what our while loops will look like. So if you look, I posted and I published this while loops exercise lesson. The notes is available for you. So I'm just going to be covering over the notes, and this is how you can follow along. So first, lesson on while loops. What is a while loop? A while loop is a block of code that repeats while a condition is true. So you can kind of think of a while loop like a conditional, an if statement that just keeps repeating itself. Now, of course, with anything we learn, any new tool we learn the syntax. We have a while keyword, we have brackets, and then we have a condition. This will be a comparative operator, something that evaluates to true or false, right? And then we have a block of code. And this code keeps repeating while this condition is true. Now, if somewhere in this block over here, the condition becomes false, it'll stop executing. And there's some examples where it's always true and some examples where it's always false, and we'll talk about that later. All right, so now I'm going to go ahead and review a for loop. So here's a for loop. We're counting from I equals 0, I less than 100, I plus plus. And this is something that repeats. And we're just going to reconstruct, as you can see, if I run this, I post this code over here. By the way, you can always copy and just paste the code there and run to follow along. And what did I do wrong? Oh, of course, we don't have the whole, whoops, looks like class, sorry to have to do this here, public static void main string, I think string args like this, and control V. So we have our statement here. And now let's run this code. Just a second. Java starter code. String args. Yes, let's do that again. Strings, not string, string. Run that code again. And you can see it copies and pastes from 0 to 100. Okay, so this is nothing new. This is something we've all known. For loops, we practiced it. Now we're going to recreate this with a while loop. Essentially what's happening, I won't read it, but we're initializing int I equals 0, right? And to convert it to a while loop, we just put the condition. While is going to run in the middle. This is the condition. It's going to continue to run while I is less than 100. And somewhere in this loop right here, somewhere in this loop, somewhere, we're going to increase by I. And if we run our code, it runs from 0 to 99. So it's like a for loop, but we just recreated it with a while loop. So you can think of while loop as like a repeating conditional. So I'm just going to repeat this condition right here every time. I'm going to run this code, and then I'm going to check this condition. Run this code and check this condition. Now, The next topic is something called infinite loops. And I just gave an example right here. While the inside stays true, and if nothing happens, it will run forever. An example of this is, while I is less than 100. If I got rid of this incrementation, see, I delete this line 15, I delete it, and if I run my code, I never changes. So what's essentially going to happen is it's going to print 0, and it's going to check, is 0 less than 100, and then print 0. And it's going to keep going forever and ever. Now, you can't see it running, but the program didn't stop. Essentially, if I scroll up, you can't see that I'm scrolling, but I am. And it's essentially running forever. So why does that run forever? Because in here, this keeps evaluating to true. So this will run basically forever, right? Okay, loops that never run. So remember how I said that this could be a condition? This could be considered a condition. Well, what if I put while false? Well, if false, repeat this. Sorry, not if, false. If, and then the condition is false, it will never repeat. So just like a if statement, the while loop will never repeat while it's false. So an example of this is while I is greater than 100. Is 0 greater than 100? Absolutely not. So when I run my code, it never executes. It's just as if it doesn't even exist. So the above code will never run because the condition is set as false. Because it can never be true, it will never run. In this way, you can use the while loop as a repeating condition. So you can think of it as a repeating condition. I'm just going to change that. So repeating condition. I just saw repeat. Just want to change that so that. So taking input from a user. So here's an example of taking input from a user. I'm going to copy that code, and I'm just going to explain it real quick. Copy that. And of course, we didn't import anything. So import java.util.scanner. And essentially, we're making input a scanner. And then we're saying, do you like candy? Enter yes or no. And we take it in our response. And that's nothing new. Now here, we're conditional for continuing to take responses. So what does this mean? If response equals yes, no. If the response is not yes, see this not statement? That's a not. So if response equals yet, so it's not yes, and the response is not no, ask again, please enter yes or no. Do you like candy? And as we can see, when we run our code, do you like candy? Enter yes or no. So I will say, let's say, do you like candy? Enter yes or no. And I'll say N. And it'll keep asking me until I give it the appropriate response. Now, what's it looking for? If I put yes, then it'll stop. Okay, so this is a little bit more complicated. Sometimes you want to define when you want to stop. And this is a definition. This defines when you want to continue. So when do you want to stop? Well, if it's equal to yes, or it's equal to no, that's when I want to stop. So another way is to define when you stop it. Pay careful attention. I surround it with brackets, and I put a not. And that defines when I want to continue. So let's repeat that one more time in case you're not clear. I defined when do I want to stop asking questions? Well, when I get a yes or no. When I get a yes or no, I want to stop asking. So if response equals yes or response equals no, then stop. But because while condition repeats while it's true, not when I want to stop, it tells me when I want to continue. If this is true, then I should continue. So then if it's false, that's when I stop. So if I define when to stop and put a not, it will work as long as that. I mean, I've basically defined it by, I've basically defined my loop by defining when I want to stop it, by putting a not when I want to stop, condition for me to stop. I hope that makes sense. Finally, we have a few things. We have break statements. So sometimes you may wish to stop executing code for a specific reason. And there could be lots of reasons why you might want to stop, right? And essentially, I'm just going to delete that code. And here we have k is going from 0. Then I define it as while true. And essentially, if I put while true, let's get rid of this statement. Whoops, Control Z. Let's get rid of this statement. Essentially, this is a forever loop. It runs forever. If we run our code, excuse me, if we run our code, run that code, essentially it's running forever. As you can see, it's running, it keeps running. It has no reason to stop because I have a while true statement. Now, I'm just going to use this break statement to say, let's just stop the code for now. Break statement to say if k reaches 100,000, then you might want to break. Let's make it 10,000 just so we can see it work quickly. And break essentially allows me to stop the code. See, as soon as it reaches 10,000, 9,999, it broke out of the loop. So break statement is, I think I said, for the purpose of this course, break statements are considered bad practice. So I don't want to see you using break statements if you can avoid it, especially right here. So I continue. If I have a condition for stopping, like that's like a condition for stopping. When do you want to stop? If k equals 10,000. So another way to do this, which is what I think is better practice, I'm just going to get rid of that. And when do I want to stop? When k equals 10,000. Now, I surround that by brackets, and I put a not statement in front of it. So I define the stop, and I put a not, and that defines when I want to continue. All right, it's better practice so that your definition of when to continue and when to stop is defined in your while statement. Shouldn't be somewhere in your loop. It's easy when it's 5 lines of code, but when it's hundreds of lines of code, you can't have specific reasons peppered all over the place for when you should stop. It should be defined up here. And that brings us on. That's all we have to say about break statements. It's basically to break the loop inside the block. We also have something called continue statements. And what continue does is it stops executing the rest of the block and starts at the top. So I gave an example over here. I'm going to copy this code over here, and I'm just going to tab it out a little bit so we can isolate some things. I have a conditional there. There we go. All right, so let's explain this code away. So I have k starts at 0. I basically say while k is not equal to 100,000. So it's going to continue from 0 to 100,000. We have k plus plus, but I'm going to say if k modulus 10 is not 0, if it's not divisible by 10, then k plus plus, and then just continue. In other words, don't print this line. And don't additionally, we already did a k plus plus, we did it twice. So sometimes we're going to say k plus plus and then go back to the top of my loop. So if I run my code, it's just giving me powers of multiples of 10. Okay, I can just say that again. So if it's not divisible by 100 or even 1,000, just go to the next number and then continue, as opposed to printing it. So go back to the top and move on to the next number. When I run my code, I see that It's just printing multiples of 1,000. Okay, so that's what continue helps me do. Continue helps me go back to the top of the loop without proceeding to the rest of it. So the rest of it was just printing it. And essentially that's what the continue statement does. And that's it. That's all we have to do with while loops. Now, I did say I would release some exercises, and you'll have 2 days to do them. So I'll release 1, 2, and 3, but you'll have, actually, I'll just release 1 and do 2, 3 tomorrow. So essentially, where are we? We'll release some while loops right now. We'll do one of them. But I recommend you doing this by yourself before continuing. And then if you need help, just watch the rest of this video. So let's take a look at this. So it says, create a method. Okay, so let's look at the instructions. So what does it say? It says create a method. So there's a few things you have to do. You have to create a method called squares under. Now I already started it right here. Okay, so we said public static string. It's going to return a string. And when we call squares under, and I defined an input as top. I could call it limit as well. Okay, but I'm going to keep it as top because it's all the same for you guys. Whoops. And then the method body, what we want to do is create a string right here. And the string is going to, well, to build a string, well, we said it's going to be equal to results. So we should say results equals nothing to start. You can call it string equals results. And we're going to build a string, and we're going to say it's going to be all of the values, squares of 1, square of 2, square of 3, square of 4, square of 5, square of 6, square of 7. So in math, we call it a base. So I'm just going to say int base equals 1, right? And essentially what we want to do is we want to say, we're going to have to import java.lang.math. And then we have math.pow as part of our library to take the power of a number. Let's just see. Let's just YouTube that. Power Java. Math power. How do we do that again? Yes, basically, essentially, math pow AB. So that's how we take the power of a number. So base to the power of 2. In fact, system, I'm going to just system dot base to the power of 2. But essentially, I want to take, I kind of want a for or while. I essentially want a loop to say that as long as this base power 2, so 1 to the power, is less than our top number, then I want to add it to my string. So let's say that again. As long as this, the base, 1 to the power of 2, is less than top, add it to results. Add it to our string. So what do I want to do? So I want to say if that, if math power base 2 is less than our top, what do I want to do? I want to add it results equals results, or result. Did I call it results? Yes, results plus math power base 2. Okay, and yeah, that's it. I want to do that over and over again. So let's run our code. I'm going to call squares under 50. I'm going to send 50. And let's see if it works to start. Info, what's happening? Oh, I forgot to put a semicolon. If I run my code again, I see that it's equal to 1.0. Well, that's interesting. Maybe I should change this to an int, because MathPow actually returns a double. So let's run that again. And you know what? Let's say it again. If MathPow base 2 is less than top, actually, let's increase MathPow. Let's increase base plus plus. In fact, let's do it after. Right after we add it, let's say base plus plus. And over here, we're going to say if math power base 2, after we say base plus plus, is less than top, we're going to do it. We're going to add it again. So we have 1 and 4. Now we're missing something in that we need a space. We need a plus space. Let's see how that works. 1, 4. And it seems like if I just did this another time, it would give me 149. Essentially, I can just copy and paste this code a bunch of times. And at the end, if MathPow base 2 is less than top, it'll add that to the results. And if it's not, it won't. Now, what if I have a really large number and I don't have enough if statements? Well, that's what the while loop is for, right? Instead of just checking if, just write this while loop right there. And if I run that code, it'll just print it up. Now I added something extra here. So anytime I ask you to add a bunch of numbers in a string and add a space at the end of it, I added something called results.trim, which is a string method, which will take white space from the end. It'll remove trailing white space that you might have. So it will pass the tests basically. So at the end of 49, there should be a space, but the .trim takes the space away. Sorry, there should be a space. I don't want there to be a space for my tests, but when you run your code, there's always a space by the time you stop. So trim removes that last piece of space. Okay, and that's how you do this exercise. So essentially what I did is I just checked this condition. I just want to add to I just have to define. What am I trying to do? I'm trying to add to my string all the powers of 2 that are less than top. So I check my power of 2. If it's less than top, add it. I check my power of 2. If it's less than top, add it. And I keep doing it. Instead of using a while loop, if statements, writing an if statements a bunch of times, you just write a while loop right there. And essentially that's how that is done. Okay? These here allows me to just print. I'm just making a function call to squares under, which is what I told you to define it as. Squares under 50, for example. And that's all there is to while loops for today. Thank you very much. I'll see you tomorrow.